I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. My guest today is Crystal Richard, PR maven, social media influencer, and blogger, better known to some of you as East Coast Mermaid. Thank you for being here today, Crystal.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd love to get, a lot of us follow you on social media, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your backstory and how you got into the line of work that you do.
Yeah, so I have a very interesting story. I'll try to give you the Coles Notes version, but I was born and raised in New Brunswick, grew up in Moncton. My parents have a beautiful cottage right on the ocean. So from the minute I don't even think I was walking yet. I had my toes in the sand, toes in the ocean, and that's kind of where the whole mermaid thing started at a young age. But I grew up on the beach, so I always loved beaches, but it's interesting because most of my childhood, teen years, I was an only child, very influenced by pop culture, movies. I loved being at the theater, and I used to think, okay, if I'm going to make all my dreams come true, I need to leave New Brunswick. I have to go to Toronto or New York or LA or whatever. So I wasn't always the biggest New Brunswick ambassador. I used to think, okay, well, I love it here, but I'm going to have to leave. So I went to university in Halifax, graduated from Dal, actually worked and lived in Las Vegas for a summer after university, and came back to New Brunswick and kind of thought, okay, what now? I had this psychology degree with a minor in business. I wanted to work in marketing, and I mean, this was back when, it makes it sound like I'm much older, but back when Facebook had just kind of come out and people were just learning about what social media was, and there weren't content creators around every corner. And so I started working in PR, worked at an agency, kind of fell in love with storytelling. It was always something I was doing as a little girl. I had a typewriter from a very early age that my parents bought at a yard sale, and I was always writing stories. But I quickly realized, I can actually share my love of New Brunswick, my love of storytelling, my love of coastal adventures with more people. And so as much as I loved doing PR, and I still to this day do PR for a living, I realized I could almost create this dream job that I thought I had to leave New Brunswick to have right here in New Brunswick and share all of this with everyone else.
You have great posts about New Brunswick. I've learned a lot about New Brunswick just from following you. Even though I live here, you find hidden gems. What are some of your tips for people, whether they're a business or just an influencer or aspiring influencer, to creating a brand online and also getting more and more followers?
Just get started. I think there are so many people out there who have a platform or they're thinking about starting a platform, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, a blog, and they worry that they're not going to be able to get partnerships because they don't have, they don't have the swipe up feature. They don't have 10,000 followers. They're not already working with big brands, and you have to start somewhere. East Coast Mermaid turned 5 in June. 5 years ago, I was only dreaming of some of the partnerships I've had. If you had told me 5 years ago I'd be sitting here talking about East Coast Mermaid, that would have just been crazy to me. So you need to start and just, I'm very big on when people say, what's being a mermaid? And I always say it's being fearless. If you have a dream and you want to do something, go ahead and do it, and don't worry about what everyone else is going to say or think. I know when I started out, it was kind of like, oh, well, mermaid, like Little Mermaid? And I was like, no, it's a way of living. It's a lifestyle. It's, just going with the flow and riding the waves and being fearless and going after your dreams. And so that's really my advice, is start today, because even if you start today, you'll start to get little partnerships, even if it's just in exchange of a product to be able to talk about it. There's so many opportunities for you out there, and people want to work with some of those new micro influencers now. A lot of people are seeing the value in working with people with a smaller niche audience because they have a very engaged, loyal audience, and so they're going to get a little bit more engagement from that.
Mm-hmm. And creating an authentic persona, whether it's for a business brand or personal brand, is so important, and that being consistency as well. How did you come up with the concept for East Coast Mermaid, and how do you describe especially your Instagram page, because it's so popular, how do you describe that to other people?
I like to say that I help people develop a mad coastal crush on New Brunswick, and it all originated from, I was at Parley Beach, which is one of my regular haunts back home. I was walking the beach in the spring at sunset, and at the time I was working at an agency, and I was starting to get that inkling I might want to be an entrepreneur. And so I thought, okay, well, what can I create that's mine, that's something that I can pour all of my energy and creativity into that I own. And I thought, I'm going to start a blog. I'd been blogging since I was a teenager. I mean, back in university, I had a live journal, and I think it was Blogspot after that. So I'd always been blogging, but it was more no one knew about it. So this was my first opportunity to be like, I'm going to create this blog and people will know about it and find out about it. So that's really it. I hired someone to do a logo, and at the time it was $400, which seemed like so much money to me. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do this because in my mind I thought if I have a legit logo, it's a legit thing. So I had the logo made, I launched the blog, and then a couple weeks later I was, still kind of thinking about, oh my gosh, I spent all this money on the logo. And a couple of my friends said, well, you could put that on a tank top and sell it and maybe family and friends will buy it. So that's what I did. So I put it on a tank top. I think I did 24 in the first run. And then next thing I knew, people started using the East Coast Mermaid hashtag. I had strangers messaging me saying they were coming down from Ontario for a summer vacation. They'd be passing through New Brunswick. Could they pick up a tank top? And the moment I was meeting strangers in a McDonald's parking lot and they were buying, 5 tank tops off of me, I'm like, okay, maybe this is something. And by the next year, I had gone out on my own, started my PR company, and not even 6 months after starting my PR company, I walked back into the lawyer's office and I said, I want to start an apparel company that will have the East Coast Mermaid clothing, but then we'll launch some other new things. And then that was kind of when Sandy Toe Shop was born. So it is all about building a brand. I mean, people find me sometimes as a PR girl, and then they find out about East Coast Mermaid, and there's ways to work together in that. And then they find out about the clothing line. And so it really has become this amazing brand that they all sort of flow together, and I'm so excited about that.
One of my favorite of your tank tops is I washed up like this.
Yes.
Perfect mermaid slogan.
For those days when you wake up and you're just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go with it. I don't care what my hair looks like. It's the perfect tank top for that.
How did followers start to happen for you? Is that something that you sought out? Is it using hashtags? What's your best advice for people or is it just natural interest that continue to grow?
It's, it's a mix of everything. I still think hashtags are incredibly valuable. I always tell people you can use 30 hashtags. Use all of them, make sure they're relevant. Make sure to have some that have, under 100,000 posts, some that have over 100,000 posts. You want to make sure you're using a little bit, because if you use a hashtag that 10 million people have used, you're not going to get noticed as much as if you use something that's a little bit more niche that has, say, 10, 20,000 posts. But also tagging different businesses, tagging partnerships. One of the things, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but if you're wanting to be an influencer and a content creator, when you go to businesses, and even if you're, buying your meal or staying there, tag those organizations. If they're then seeing that you're tagging them and they're sharing it, that's paving the way, that's building a relationship. And I mean, I'm all about relationships. Again, working in PR, relationships are everything, but it's the same thing for content creation. If you can start showing people you're a loyal customer, a loyal fan now, then there might come a point where they're going to turn around and say, hey, we need to work with this person. They've really given us a lot of love without asking for anything. We should reach out about working together.
I've read some of your PR advice online. One of them is to introduce yourself to different media people, especially in your community. I know that can get in the way for a lot of Canadians who are shy, but how has that played an important role in what you do, not just on your personal blog, but for your clients as well?
Yeah, it is so important. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here if I hadn't have, excitedly jumped and screamed when I saw you leaving Honeybeans and said, oh my gosh, I'm a big fan. You just have to kind of, and I think that's it. If you want it bad enough, you will push the fear away and just do it. I remember one of my funniest stories. I once met Richard Branson, and I just walked up to him, and everyone that I told this to later were like, you just approached him? Weren't you nervous? And I said, well, I knew he was a really big deal, and he was having an event the next morning, and he personally invited me to his event because I had the guts to go up and say hi. And it's very simple, and I think you just need to tell yourself the worst thing that can happen is they'll say no, or they'll be like, who does she think she is? And you just need to kind of Taylor Swift shake that off and keep going. So try to get, I know, and for especially for people that are very introverted, I know it can be really hard to just say, go introduce yourself to people. If in person is too scary, send them an email, because an email, again, chances are the worst that's going to happen is you'll get crickets, and crickets are totally normal. The best thing that could happen is they write you back and you start to build a relationship. But you always need to make sure it's mutual. So you don't want to just be like, gimme, 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 I need this, can I have that? compliment them, get to know them, ask them questions. That's how build relationships, just like you would build relationships with anyone else.
When I met you at Honeybeans, I was a fan of you too, so that's how this naturally happened.
Yeah.
What are some business mistakes people make when they are going about, especially their online persona and becoming a brand online?
Yeah, I think it's starting two things. One thing is, I think, trying to do too much and be all of the things. I think identifying your niche, whether it's just figuring out who you want to reach out to and making sure that they're a good fit instead of trying to cast a wide net and go after everyone. But I think also remaining authentic. I think once you start taking on partnerships or doing things that people can tell it might be for the money or, vanity kind of stuff, that's when people start to see through it and be like, well, I've never heard you talk about beauty products before. Why are you suddenly talking about beauty products? I know myself, I'll interject something every once in a while if there's a product I really love, but if I started talking about beauty products 24/7 tomorrow, people would be like, but what about sea glass and islands and lighthouses? Like, where did all that go? So once you sort of figure out your brand, it doesn't mean you can't talk about all of these other things, but making sure that you are staying authentic and genuine to what you have typically created and talked about so that people know what to expect. Because once you start kind of going all over the place and ignoring your audience, then it can be a little dicey. And I think it's important to express yourself and do what you want, but if you are in the business of wanting to be a content creator or an influencer, you do sometimes have to think about your audience as well and who they are. So kind of remembering to not lose sight of that, but still be true to yourself and talk about and do things that you like.
Can you speak a little bit about your PR business as well?
Yeah.
I know that you do an online school, I think.
Yeah, so Crystal Richard & Co. is my little global PR business that I run from our home. It's going to be 5 years in February since I've started that business. I work with small businesses, startups, entrepreneurs around the world, a lot of female entrepreneurs, which is my favorite part about it, is getting to help women who have started amazing businesses get the media coverage they deserve. So I help them get into outlets like Forbes. I've gotten a client on the Steve Harvey show back in the day, all kinds of things. Chatelaine magazine, that was a really cool thing. So I do that for a living, and then I have digital PR school that I launched twice a year, which basically my students who participate in that can actually learn how to do PR on their own, because I'm a big believer in you don't need a publicist, you don't need this huge budget to do PR, you just need to know how to build relationships and tell a really great story. And if you can do that, you can absolutely do PR.
I know you believe in building a media list. What's your best advice for especially a small business who is doing these kind of things on their own and trying to grow it themselves? How do you go about building a network of media outlets and then also corresponding with them? Do you send out your own press releases?
Yeah. So media list is all about, again, it's knowing who your audience is and not just putting someone because they're at the outlet on your media list. So figuring out what your angle is, what you want to talk about, and then who the best person at that outlet is to write about that story. So if you're pitching, say, a food product, you don't want to be pitching a tech reporter about how you have this really amazing new snack bar. If you're pitching beauty products, you want to be pitching someone who's talking about beauty products. And maybe it's not entirely, might not always talk about beauty products, but they talk about lifestyle or wellness, things like that. So always making sure that you have the best person for that outlet. And then with the media releases, I'm still a fan of the press release. I don't think they're dead. A lot of people like to say, oh, the press release is dead. It's not, but never rely on that solely. Always still continue to personalize your pitch, to send that personal email to a journalist or an editor and say, listen, if you'd like some more information, here is a press release that will fill in all of the blanks, but never just send a press release and say, here you go, can you write about us? Take the time, and personalization is everything. Whenever I send an email to a journalist or an editor, I actually take the time to watch a recent segment they've done, read an article they've written, and compliment them so that I'm not going right in with the ask. And I've actually had people, I had someone from the National, CBC, actually write me back and said, this isn't a good fit, but I actually wanted to take 5 minutes out of my busy day to tell you how much I appreciated that you started out by complimenting a recent coverage I did. Thank you so much, that was appreciated, because she's like, most PR people don't do that anymore. And like, no problem, I would feel weird not, personalizing this. So being very personal is important.
I will second everything you just said as a journalist.
Yes, because you would experience this firsthand.
I exactly agree with that. I appreciate a press release. It puts stuff on my calendar and my radar, but when they've pitched it to a show you do specifically, they know the fit of what they're pitching to what you do. It shows that they're aware of who your audience is, and that does make a lot of difference. Can we talk a little bit about, you are known for your love of sea glass, sea views. Can you talk a little bit about some of your favorite things in New Brunswick for those who are just fans of you as an Instagrammer especially?
So no shocker here, everyone knows how much I absolutely love St. Andrews. So I was telling you this earlier, but when I was a little girl, my parents used to come here for conferences, and I was always very jealous when I was left behind. And they'd bring home postcards, and I'd put the postcards on my mirror and say, okay, one day when I'm an adult, I'll get to go there. So huge fan of St. Andrews and love being here, but Grand Manan is probably, I get people that sometimes think I live on Grand Manan, and I say, no, we just spend a lot of time there in the summer. Grand Manan is absolutely magical, and it's a great destination for sea glass, but even more so for sea glass, Campobello Island. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know anything about Campobello until about 4 or 5 years ago when I went for the first time. And I couldn't believe it was in our province, and I had never been there before, because I'd been going to Grand Manan since I was a teenager. That was nothing new, but to experience Campobello and how different it feels, but yet it's still New Brunswick, and the beaches, the people, the ferry rides, everything about it is just magical. And so I love making sure that people know that Campobello is literally right in our backyard, and it's 2 short ferry rides. It's not that complicated. And then hopefully one day people will be able to go back to the States. But yeah, also a very big fan of anything, I mean, all of Charlotte County, but then going up towards St. Martin's and the Fun Day Trail. I always tell people, you know, we hear a lot about the Cape Breton, the Cabot Trail. Fun Day Trail is a must experience if you're visiting New Brunswick. It's a great day trip. Just cruise along that coast. And what I love about it is that it's accessible for everyone. So you don't have to do these crazy hikes to see these amazing views. You can pull your car over, and if someone has mobility issues, they can still see all of this spectacular, majestic New Brunswick coastline from their vehicle. So
what I love about what you do online is you have also a huge, even though you talk about New Brunswick and travel in New Brunswick, you have such a huge New Brunswick following, because I've learned so many things I didn't know were in our own province from you.
Oh, I learn something new every day.
Right? What's one of your latest hidden gems that people should go check out?
Latest hidden gems.
Or all-time favorite?
All-time favorite. I think I would have to say, oh my gosh, I should have better prepared for, should have known this question was going to come up. I'm gonna say I think everyone has to at some point experience Grand Manan. I know it's gonna be a little biased because I've talked about it a lot of ways. Definitely Grand Manan, but a hidden gem I think would also be Campobello. And I think it's the fact that, like I said, I didn't even realize Campobello was a thing. I still thought it was in the US until 5-6 years ago. And so I would say that would definitely be one. But I think another one of our hidden gems is our whale watching. And I don't think that people realize that you can do a day trip to St. Andrews, go out on one of those amazing tours and see humpbacks breaching right before your eyes, that you can take a day off of work to go play with whales. That to me is one of the highlights of living here in New Brunswick and having this literally in our backyard. So, because whales are so, I mean, I took my fiance, we went whale watching 2 years ago. He had never been before, and he was a little like, well, it'll make you happy, so I'll go. And the minute those humpbacks came up alongside the boat, I mean, he had his phone out to take pictures so fast and was like, are you seeing this? And it took his breath away. And so I think everyone should experience whale watching at some point in their lifetime in New Brunswick.
Speaking of fiancés, I'd love to point out that you're getting married very soon right here in St. Andrews at the Algonquin. The wedding industry obviously has been on hold in so many ways over the course of the pandemic. Are you excited to be planning it? Obviously the timing couldn't be better in terms of the province moving green. And how is that experience for you, planning a wedding in a famous resort in a small town and working with local entrepreneurs to make that happen?
It's been an absolute dream come true. And then, I mean, of course, we've had the nightmare of COVID, but, it was last year. We were originally supposed to get married in 2020. And when we booked our 2020 wedding, we booked in January. So we were working really fast. And I will definitely say I'm glad we had the extra time when we decided to postpone. I thought, okay, we just got engaged. This isn't going to be the end of the world. We have more time to plan. And then I'm definitely going to be doing things probably for the next 4 days that I'm going to be thinking, why didn't I just do this winter when we were stuck at home in a snowstorm? But it's been amazing. It's been exciting. It's been an experience. I know any bride that's gotten married during COVID will say we're going to be a group of women that will remember this for the rest of our lives, because it hasn't been without its challenges, its tears, its stress. But working with the amazing teams around here, I mean, we have a lot of small businesses. We are very passionate about keeping it as local as possible. So we're working with Peony and Pear for our flowers. And the minute I found out that they were grown, not flown, and that everything is grown right here, and it's not, carbon emissions of bringing all of these things in, that was so special to us. And so, yeah, everyone has just been so wonderful and compassionate and understanding of how stressful this whole experience has been. And getting to celebrate in the new green phase in New Brunswick is the ultimate wedding gift.
I'm definitely enjoying watching you prepare online as I see all the posts. When we talk about your online following, you're obviously on many different platforms. What do you think the value is in each? For instance, is Instagram better for certain things, Twitter for others? What is the value in?
So I find I break them down into all of the different values. So Twitter is fantastic for my PR business. That's how I make friends with journalists. It's how I share articles that journalists have written. So Twitter is one of my favorite platforms for that. It's also where I get a lot of my news, where I find out what's going on. If there's breaking news that I should halt pitching because there's a tragedy or something going on that people aren't really going to be paying attention to their inbox, I know because of Twitter. Instagram and Facebook are special to me because the East Coast Mermaid audience is really divided. I have a lot in the 20 to 50 crowd that many of them are hanging out on Instagram, and they love the Instagram. But what I find especially great about East Coast Mermaid is I have this 50 and over audience that I just absolutely love, and they're all on Facebook. Facebook or email. I have some of our fans and followers that send me the sweetest emails. Someone sent me a picture of their dog's birthday and his little birthday outfit yesterday. And these are people that I've just met maybe once in passing at a market or have never met at all, but we've built this connection just by having them follow. And so it's really great to sort of cater to those two audiences, and knowing, if I'm going to post a sea glass picture, to make sure to post it on Facebook, because that audience will also want to see it. But if it's something that's more relevant to, people that are in their 20s or 30s, I'll make sure to put that on Instagram. So just making sure that you know where your audience hangs out is really key. And
do you personalize, if you're doing a post on Instagram, you don't automatically share it to Facebook? Do you do it individually?
I totally do it individually, yes. I've managed to keep it that way just because sometimes I do find it needs that little extra tweak. And, you want to have your hashtags on Instagram, but you don't need those on Facebook. And so making sure that I don't like it to ever look rushed, or, if I'm really busy and I don't post for a couple days, I'd rather that than to post something and do, a bad job or have it feel like I did it just for the sake of posting something. So being very intentional with what you post and where.
And are you intentional in terms of timing? Do you try to post every so often? Is there a rhythm to it?
So a little bit of a rhythm. Definitely, I know the timing for Instagram is definitely early in the morning. So I've actually I'm not an early morning riser person, but I've been known to roll up in bed at like 7:15, post a draft I had ready to go on Instagram, and then fall back asleep. And so it's very much knowing when your audience is active. And that doesn't mean you can't post something spontaneously at a different hour of the day. If it's something great and it's something your followers are going to love, they're going to find it. But you always have to keep in mind Instagram algorithms, Facebook algorithms. So knowing when is the right time to post, although Facebook is kind of a mystery these days, so I don't even know what's going on over there. But Instagram, I've definitely figured out kind of the rhythm to it.
There's obviously new platforms emerging all the time. TikTok, I'm not on it yet. I've been told I should try. Are there any new platforms that you are finding valuable?
I actually haven't really found any yet. I went on TikTok during the early pandemic phase because I think that's what we were all doing. But I think after a couple nights of spending 2 hours just scrolling, I thought, okay, I need to get back to doing something more constructive. So I'm not on TikTok, but I will say in terms of new platforms, it's not necessarily a new platform, but Instagram has recently shared that they're now a video app, not a photo sharing app. So I am realizing that I need to put more energy into creating reels that can be shared on Instagram and creating more videos. So it's cute because we were actually at the Sea Caves this weekend for the Sea Cave dining experience. And, it was like, okay, honey, I need some photos of me doing this, but then can you also get some video clips as well so that I can do a reel later? So it's kind of created a bit more work because you really need to capture the photos, especially if you're creating content on your blog or you want to do some Insta stories, but then you also need to create the video content so that you can make some reels and do things like that too. So it's not easy, and there's a lot of people that, you know, think, oh gosh, like that just, you know, it's so easy, but even just writing a Instagram caption and figuring out the hashtags and figuring out who to tag, and reels, don't even get me started on editing those, like it's a lot of work. So
do you find it's worth the extra time then when you take a few more moments to think of something that's catchy or clickable?
Yeah, totally worth it, because I do find, you know, sharing stories with photos to me has always been important. So sometimes I will put a, you know, quick catchy caption, but I do like to share a little bit behind each photo as well.
All right, well, thank you for joining me today. I hope we can go to maybe Sea Glass Festival on Campobello Island in September together.
We are booked, so just let me know when you're going and I'll make sure we're all there.
Thank you so much for being here today, Crystal.
Thank you for having me.
My guest today has been Crystal Richard, the East Coast Mermaid. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.